data says that nothing less than 2.3 million jobs have been registered onto the SNIT database. And no, yeah, or register was SNIT. Inti se wo juxtapose for more encore, yeah, the number will be north of that. But conservative estimates, 2.3 million jobs and equity in this period. Now, so be our created 2.3 million jobs, formal jobs recorded on the SNIT database in a 7-year period. Or catcher will say, man, another opportunity. No be created jobs. In fact, no be catcher me say, what's the same in Humana? It could be north of about 3 million.
FM.
I mean, some of the
analysts new job
opportunities who were going through it said the new job opportunities now you can also say it could be about 3 million. I'm saying, well, I may have seen the estimates that we've done, but I know they work before this manifesto, so but he's not far from the truth. You can believe, you can be sure, you can trust, said this administration. And if you take jobs, for example, and near my per se a year for jobs, for example, we're starting off with about 1 million youth in digital skills opportunity because we are moving towards a big digital economy. Minya opportunity Casa manifesto launch. I spoke about digitization, and I was trying to explain to the whole nation. Say digitization one and end in itself. Architecture, infrastructure, be a bibi. Tiabra here Ghana Post. Nango for na Ghana Post. You almost see over here 1 million address and can we? Okay, yeah. Ghana card, Ghana card, then Ghana card, they be videos or social media. So who could jump baby na come drive Ghana card coach Ruby, no problem. Yeah, mobile money interoperability. So you could connect money from network to network and from network to bank accounts and other payment platforms. It be more na say we crampo the nanka accepting switch be Nescape keke na musi no problem. I feel the mention in Aboma. Akwala bi ti ajiringa no akire ho. We school or ye duane wo fie. So call Instagram ultimate trying to do an picture the to home and the nyom to ase now we're connecting the payment platform to and then a digital address to be suiting fee no so funny phone say Ghana card any eSIM registry no ya can boom to be tin fee no ahwe no order aduane no atua ka by momo na akoka ni po ye aduane ne nsa na dispatch rather be find the address na the call obi enya adwuma obi enya sika all through that digital interface. Now, say you perceive digitization called 2.0, and there are quite a number of things that are under the new digital state. That level of digitization, you need a lot more people with digital knowledge and skills. And we are estimating, say, about 1 million people, 1 million young Ghanaians to be trained for digital jobs here in Ghana, across Africa, and the world. That alone, because this first term, Fana said this first chapter, we didn't do 1 million digital jobs. In Kanye, NDC be do 2.3 million. Said the year no cry to me to us, we are now doing one become that alone is 3 million. That alone cries 3 million. And sana several other say we for example, private sector expansion I per se signed back construction, infrastructure development, industrialization, and agribusiness. And near my watch rest per se and the housing in Kwa. Master developers are through the incentives package no enuma ebeba just under the housing program, access to housing for all enuma ebeba tesano 320 units are yede come police for nansen adan bi so I am saying nipa be 500 and a year juma. Now can you imagine if you are doing multiples of this across the country? We are introducing an SME bank. Mami oton indomie wa hey across the street. Omo eton niema across the street. Bebre ubisa ne say nti bank ben na obekwa akwa save akwaje business. Because say banks no ye kwa ye business na ye no mo ntiase o. Omo pe certificate of registration and a certificate of incorporation and years of banking record. Omo nti ye de na se. Nti Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, one of the significant promises he say ye per se ye be a bank specifically for small and medium scale enterprises. So it's not a bank that is going to focus on retail business, but they're going to focus on SMEs. So say, remember, say through the development bank, you told me the Sikaba to support SMEs, and the development bank being a wholesale bank, and yes, this Canada banks no more. But banks no bureaucracy no more procedures. They send your money SMEs interface and so any. So now we want to have a dedicated bank, an SME banker. Or more between a channel says can or more free development banker or between a channel no directly to SMEs because they better understand the SME framework. And Unkwa is going to create tens of thousands of jobs within the SME framework. Where BB said the Women's Trade Empowerment Fund, WOTEF. I no say yede ba ede abehye rural banks no sapo munsu. But what to me asum ye ma me mo edidwa.
In the WOTEF no will not be a bank.
No, it's not a bank.
A fund.
Because you see, banks were
sure.
Banks anymore.
Sure.
But to be out to say there's a particular type of business banks no omuntia say no relationship form like SMEs. Nti no to assume so we create a dedicated bank for them. So first there's a bank for housing and construction and a industrial bank. Nti no a type of business. But say gender there. I mean, I know the NDC is promising say create
women's bank.
Well, I know your own promise. Yema idijane ade ombeti no ma hwe say so bank bi o hwa ye kwa omka say omo nhwe because yenye ma na and I say because yenye mema na. Is that the real problem? It is okay say bank ombehwe ma nko a eno na be solve problem na yema na beti omo didwa wo edwam omo ti ase yen asem ye kan say yen ne omo tena ase na omo kire yen the kind of sika omo hia ewo dwam edi didwa bosin ade be ma didwa wo dwam ne ade omo tade om sika ma rural banks ni susufo no na mo rural bank ni susufo na ya sika ni ho bebre a ebe support wo nti yen say enye say because oyo oba nti ne yen maniska because ni dwa odi no ne concentration no institutions na wo ho no om sika enso ne sapo mu nsu hye ye be bo foto ne de amasa rural banks no any companies a year Juma at that level no must serve them.
But would that not be a duplication because I work at SME bank? No, that's what the SME bank.
No, into SME no. There are a lot of young people who are doing business on tech platforms, who are doing their other friend digitized businesses,
yes.
small businesses. And a bit different from your mama with Dija, Ewudjum, or Kokwanswa, Kofadiaba, Utunia Maton, and you're slightly different. So for us, the two are two distinguished things. But as someone can say, sir, interventions when because question was about jobs.
Yes.
What's seen na Juma a wasie, a Juma bibi wasieno. And to me, Dr. Bawumia de Nesasi ne Boso Kase, jobs is going to be a big agenda in administration. And you can be sure, say, from the track record, no, so Kase Sanima will be mining. So a number of things to open up mining. You go ponche a good year. Na ne hwehwe no na em se nkofo dia sensuo ni asase to say one minerals development bank, two opese aban no na ye prospecting of baby mineral resources no na wo na first also ko prospecting nsuo mu ne ade no ehun hia se wo be ni biom, three logistics a wo hia e de aye mining no gold catcher machine any financing kakra unya no through the minerals development bank any the your friend is saying community mining process now I started to say airboa to fight galamsino so that we move people from the illegal and irresponsible mining towards more responsible and legal ways of mining. Today, it is estimated about 1 million people are working in the small-scale mining value chain. Can you imagine and estimate the number of jobs you be creating when we put in place this mechanism? So it's not just about chasing them and burning their excavators, but it's also about giving them an alternative mining in a responsible manner. Because that's an alternative livelihood. Only mining do abroba na bibia ebia sika obenya mining mu na compare nti onko but say woman no baby obetumi any mining woman machine woman no the financial support kakra na fi o science wato gold na or mine o science wato under a gold for forex program gold for oil program and a gold purchase programs na afi our support to produce our market to consume. Now, across all of this value chain, there are jobs.
There are jobs. We will bear two questions on the work so far. Number one, on the number of banks that more proposed. I remember, before the banking sector cleanup, the narrative out there was commercial banks no adorsum. For a country of 30 million people at the time, not the number of commercial banks I want were just too many. Consolidating some of them, maybe free banking licenses, maybe savings and loans and all of that. If that has been done so far, economy and share that and overcome a banking sector cleanup, the challenges at the buying completely. This manifesto promises about 3 new banks. SME Bank, Minerals Development Bank. I mean, that would take us back to before banking sector cleanup days, no?
So, Obekaya, banking sector cleanup, no? While the finance minister at the time made this argument, no? The primary argument was not say banks not doors, and so they should be consolidated. The primary argument was that banks not be or more in new prudential requirements, no? CBI say was a liquidity ratio, ASA. It was say toxic assets. And more say your assets or what they papa you to me edges Canada to any poor deposit. I will say do say NPLs non-performing loans as part of I will say. Despite the fact that NASA finance minister there was no bank that omitted this requirement. Omuka say be only being consolidated. What am I saying? So the problem was not as much as about the number of banks as it was about banks that were not meeting the prudential requirements. In the end, the number of banks is not really the issue. Now, if say it's been found out, say there are about two categories that here dedicated banking attention: SMEs and in the mining regime. What is important is that those banks, when established, continue to meet the prudential requirements. In fact, it's like any of the banks currently in the system. If you're in the system and you are not meeting the prudential requirements, and the Bank of Ghana no benyasem. But if they are meeting the prudential requirements, I'm not sure the issue is about the number of banks. It is about the fact that the banks are meeting the prudential requirements and are more importantly able to serve customers in the specific financial zones and areas. Development bank. But development bank, no say in a particular a wholesale bank or just man on no they are banks in the on cut down could be branches or the bracani France and so it's not so much about the number of banks, it's about the functions of those banks and more importantly the ability to meet the prudential requirements.
And how are we sure in this policy say these banks almost services no be ring fenced now outside
and obey the functions of first of all the regulators. License are already more and there will be a universal banking license but two area of emphasis will focus on into banking supervision department of the central bank and it be making sure say or more fit within those categories. Into more board members we MD na say you are not meeting those requirements move for la
my next question on the waka so far the accusations, some of the policies you just mentioned, they are Neoma as a copy and paste from NDC. For example, the NDC has said, or more promise so be training 1 million youth in coding. And I'm going to change it, bro. I know say 1 million youth in digital skills.
By the way, it's a coding idea in time, man. About that time, about that year.
Coding,
So almost on promise, and I'm promising the time.
Oh, now some Mahama
maybe sir, time man on promise.
I don't know the exact time. I mean, say Mahama.
You see, so Tracy digitization journey now also. I know that leading into this point now. It's clear why no create digital agenda. And then we see about Tina Bisan Kwalaya was saying, when a friend Mr. Digital on better on the program digital agenda. And if I started building foundation or Shisheba. So no Shishani foundation no catch her say baby I made maybe 1 million digital jobs account. It's clear say follows a certain path however. So midway through the process who be Johnny Jinam Finfin. And I'll give you an example. Who be Johnny Jinam Finfin. So as a person pointed direction be now claim say idea. As our politics we say Yehubi. And I'll give you two examples. Example back a free SHS. Now I start taking a free SHS once in 2008. And started in fact 2000. The year 2000, in line with your party philosophy, JB Dankwa can say about enriching the lives of people. You invest in NIPA. And then I be a manifesto. You did Dankwa starting. You invest in NIPA. You enriching the lives of people.
Yes.
John Ajikum Kufo buy no say obey capitation grant because it's not right. Say Ghana kwala you be one or not tifie because NIPA peniska. Education should not be a privilege. It should be a right. And to start a capitation grant. Now Dankwa Kufo 2008. No, cause I will build upon that with free senior high school education. And to me, just before 2016, then Mr. Mahama made a promise. So, okay. Or best start it progressively free. And Nanado can say, it's an announcement, it's a good announcement because it means that you are coming back to the point we've been making from 2000 to 2008. Yes, are progressively free. Who follow conversation, a lot of evidence has been provided about the fact that even in the year that he said he will implement, several day schools no say fees, they were still paying their fees. Now, fast forward, and then he turns around to say, so no crown or the free SHS by trying to obfuscate the whole argument. Say, okay, no, the buy no Ghana for a kaya, Ghana for refugee. Another example. Tama transport fare started cost through. And Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia say, what that been one who said transport fares we say. GPI for no more case because the petrol bore cost or spare parts bore cost. It's understandable, say, also better on the transport fares more. So it's not just about telling them, say, men to. How do you come up with a bold solution, an innovative idea? I best stop our transport fares. No, so I dream when we say electric vehicles never solve. Meboa. Wasanswa said before the end of this year, the first bay 100 buses, ebeba. When him say you call on G manifesto about 2 days ago, you Ramhama, Oma Kolabi the electric car be Abren Ufi and your Kotne Muna, Uchi na so electric vehicles are very good. Electric vehicles are very good, is the way to go. Or Bayana feed about Kwakazo or no crown or the electric vehicles idea by. Into this thing about Omson coding, I was
1 million.
Ghana phone in any one or pursue digital agenda. One started as far back as 2017. One uncle for China no about digitization exercise. No cast or the 1 million youth in digital skills a bar. And Mamma Casa some last time be. In community, have you forgotten? So, I'm almost ready to say, abandon economy, nana,
or digitization. But so him say, no, your former schoolmate and friend, Omane Boama, would disagree with you.
About what?
And he's made the point consistently, say, digitization doesn't happen in a vacuum. It should run on an infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And that infrastructure, under him as communications minister. Fiber optic, national data center, build that crowd digital center, and all of that.
And digitization are running. What is it running on? It's running on the national ID database. It's running on the digital property address system. It's running on the mobile money interoperability. Some issues now my litigate backwards because Ghanaians are clear now. First, now education and a debate, and they'll be so be as one committed to education. Will be able to catch Another issue that came up for debate was digitization. It's settled. Quite recently, no person made another argument about health. And I'm going to see hospital back. Now, when we started putting out the data, it's become quite clear. And who caught district by district? Abraham, information minister, I caught district by district. Ghanaians have settled that debate as well. So, one partner or investing in healthcare infrastructure. Say healthcare jobs. Agenda 111 year. About 60,000 people are going to get jobs in these facilities across the country. About 20,000 direct, others on the sites. And under the job structure, we are even now proposing a jobs abroad program. So more ye training even in health krampono. And you know crown ye share himself on Ghana. It be more through a government program. Yeah, be Barbados near there. Fee almost be opportunity to work under a government program abroad. No money is cardia brebusion or minus when you and there are several issues up for litigation. Say, you know, men am the bar first, men am kind of first. Ghanaian no say questions being a day nim. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia solutions ne saying. Ira Mahamani solutions ne saying. Now so NDC nipoa or to say a bonyum no, but to me a quacosa. But we are not bano bisano anti problems ipa answers no yen the end day. Kofu some answers ne the end. So to abama MPPR. Answers na man ebeboano.
Many honorable Kojo Pon Commander Aiding Komo or a minister for works and housing or a vice chair of the NPP manifesto committee and yeneno AD and Komo. Kojo, my last question and then we come to tax reforms where I think a lot of interest in social media immediately after the manifesto presentation na bebrina Centown teacher for the flattery the promise to teachers say they will be incentivized to buy cars and nurses for the identity. I want us to get some clarity on that promise. But I believe one existential threat for us as a country, the state of our water bodies.
That's true.
A result of illegal mining. Yeah. It seems to me, maybe I might be wrong, but in the very immediate solution to deal with Yensuna air pollution. Manti Bibi signed the manifesto.
Priority number 12. So we have bridge version now on page 30.
Okay.
Or say we are going to protect our environment, specifically restoring our forests through reforestation programs. He talks about 30,000 hectares of degraded areas of reforestation. He talks about 1,000 hectares of bamboo and rattan plantations. He talks about providing tree seedlings and plantain suckers in a minimum of 1,000 communities. Then he goes on to talk about ushering in a golden age for Ghanaian-owned small-scale mining. Now, why will he talk about that under protection of the environment? Because a lot of the small-scale mining are eco-sold, and like you rightly said, along our water bodies, and they're destroying you. In fact, me and Kasa may fly to Takrade as we flew over. In Siuna, brown.
River Pra.
Yes, because of a lot of illegal and irresponsible mining. Or say there are two ways to deal with it. But obey law enforcement. But she said, law enforcement now won't create an alternative. Legal, responsible mining. I said, and in addition to the law enforcement, and I'm catch us one under the Bawumia presidency, the government of the Republic of Ghana and a geological survey, I'm say Hana Gold. Until our regime now, I'm say what the prospecting license. Because also mom is a bibri also prospecting license, but say it's our regime no because geological survey no among us hanewo. Number 2, mamu community mining licenses. And community mining any new thing. Ya pilot in this administration. Bimu say na say or vice president. Adena ideas ni bi. Ideas ni bi wo hwa ene air function. Baby wo hwa any vision. Or can in ne crampo a mpanimfo say yate but say ni decide say yeko. And when you are joking, some first year nation is a chrono, saying something no be never catching and say, and I say, or no, so they are what chichi when it to posse, young Fanko Hanebeko. One of them, community mining, a year Jumane. To say one, or mining by geological survey, 2, Yabama community mining licenses, no more. 3, resources are here, which is funds and machinery, gold catcher machines, ya started, I say, Moon Sabeka, and on my 4, Muria, Yato. Tony refining was near the back here currency. It's a whole ecosystem which grows mining, but also reduces the tendency for Nkofo to go prospecting and mining in water bodies. Now, no way, and we say soldier for navy for near the ATS in Susua or more air pamunko for Fisua, Ubia because I buy Mudiabo. Adiyama Moase Semunquasi, why are you still insistent? Say, per so it's a two-sided strategy, and you put 2 sides in
Mayemra, because of time, to tax reforms, and maybe first off, clarify this: the promise to teacher for any nurse for, because we know, sir. Previously, there was a policy so be a nurse, not so we import a car, a bar, or enjoy tax waivers. And at a point, that policy was abused. Then it was suspended along the line. Is that the same promise?
So what are we the all kind of even including the capacity of the vehicle that you can bring.
Okay.
And we also say I'm saying 1.8 cc, not more than 1.8 cc. In fact, in our contemplation, within a certain period, when to me, it be like we say, why I say we a car dealer because if we are a teacher now we are next now every week be an answer.
Or the care, or
you didn't go for all the send out the no. And there are guidelines on it that are aimed at addressing sending for abusing the last time. You rightly said there was abuse. Until now, even the capacity of vehicle, how many vehicles you can bring in for a period, are there per se? And then, Ghanaian na or your nurse, and now a teacher, or your medical worker, no teacher, no per se or talk car. Then, Momonia so better the IN or Ghana has a be or so important. Taxation now, and I say duties now. Yeah, to me, as part of incentives, I did more. So say also more money in a particular capacity. The point is that the lessons are or the implementation of the previous ones. And on without people abusing it like the first one.
It is a promise. A buying a teacher for us, matoka
Oh, in fact, me who another variation. Be say a bind say obeto car teacher say one teacher one car one cancer. Who say the other confusion shut up is up to one cancer or say in fact he was specific say 1.8 cc and now obe to me at the bum without paying duties on it. And I can tell you the details of it is within that 4-year period. And that is an incentive that we are making available to you
for teachers and the criticism said a government that promised teachers laptops teacher for if that same government they promise it, because that's some of the criticism I've read on social media. So our government now is promise car, then teacher for should treat that promise with the contempt it deserves.
To correct, government in promises or bema teacher ni be a car. Or say Obama kwama wa kraka if you brucha emro 1.8 cc no wo dia bemu wuntu ya duties
to one
kaba, and then under the guidelines that have been provided no what to me the abam okay President Kufuor did something like that for doctors.
Yes,
for doctors
and even nurses at a point,
and it worked smoothly until last minute in Kufuor yes omdom hu be gym na fi dipa ba ko person crackers be ya afu no dey pick up beer 2 point something near there in eba. And then when it was tried a second time, no, the abuse was also getting a bit tired. So say guidelines, but it's not a binding so better car. I'm a teacher for one casada.
For the sake of policy coherence, no, wouldn't you rather have probably said, say, ye be a quine amount for imported cars, but when we have 6 or so vehicle manufacturing companies in Ghana, why don't they buy from these companies? Maybe amount of time I would be trying rather than
no. You see, what beside question man a number of tax incentives to I know they could beyond teacher ni.
Okay.
Obi bia or person automated in Ghana vehicles. Be tax incentives are being available to everybody. Number 2, Dr. Bawumia also at this person the credit scoring system eba Ghana, so that they are kind of secondly paying over a period a easy amount, so that you are able to pick up that vehicle, that made in Ghana vehicle that has a tax
which is brand new,
and pay over a period. Obi horse you pay. Ni brebi ewo Germany. Wachen car be 1.6 into a person there no ba because or a teacher. So to me echo through the process, it procures a vehicle no. Na what they ba or me anymore. Dr. Bawumia say, only teacher for any nurse for any other tenants. It's one of their requests. Okay, so me ready me talk. They already kayama incentives who Ghana has say. Let me person me dear no bar. Can I get some help there? I'll say no problem. We'll give that one to you. So it's not counterproductive. Saying kaya there ye and I say ye deny the ye or Ghana in favor of this one and kaya counterproductive. In this case, the ye or Ghana crumple bigger and larger benefit pool into any counterproductive.
The thing on tax reforms and the kind of policy proposals I'm looking at, say, because of the current economic challenges and the fact that even assessing the Eurobond market, the problem, at least in the short to medium term, why would any government decide rather say my very constant source of revenue, which is taxes, afemo bema tax amnesty or more de tax Kenya YPF free ho ye bema flat rate? Why would any government want to do that?
Because oko the actual for friend on the cover by anymore the etymology of your debt problem now.
Yes.
Primarily because expenditures on government, government into me meeting. I know somebody will say, now if government is not able to meet the expenditures, then why do you want to give some more taxes out? Because government, this whole thinking say was buying or BBA to your BBA. A buying starts off by programming a lot of expenses in the fiscal framework. Budget to one of the first things out here in the fiscal framework, income, expenditure, and financing balance.
Yes.
Accountants force it balance the equation. Okay. Economists they say balance the fiscal framework. Now, who load the expenses now? First option a revenue.
Yes.
Revenue no. Once why expenses ne we are code in budget Mr. Speaker, this year we'll do Accra to Kumasi road. Accra to Kumasi nyina show. Say obey. Now if you would train revenue. January, February, March revenue number, April, May, June revenue nenso. contractor no so because we kind of akobo besia ye adwuma na do 15% or the certificate about Ay3ka we are buying the abene say we be capital market no akoye finance we ton treasury bill na say we eurobond akopiska na de bia betua contractor no ube wie na car wo pile go over a period in your bid to satisfy the expenditure commitments no e ka na eden kwa na e costro se ka na be $1 na uti anye yie na unya 1 year depreciation of a significant effect se ka na 100 million kra $100 million ABA 100 million cedis because it's 1-to-1 depreciation hit to 100 million to me be 300 million now so more besia ba ko bia to okay I've had several debates with our friends on the NDC side say change in the debt stock does not mean an increase in borrowing okay into Dr. Bawumia say so who person who deal with debt problem no pa one of the first things I was saying is also cutting expenses so to cut expenses reduce the size of government I say not more than 50 ministers watch a number of things obey. But one big thing I can me about tax question so one big thing I can is also reducing government expenditure by 3% of GDP. But I mean kakra fiscal analysis now yet the susundu ye bitu mo susundu a percentage of GDP because 100 million there and yet the same as 100 million or China. Yeah. Enti what the 100 million bet to 2 GDP no 3% of GDP over 2024 budget of 1 trillion now 3% of GDP is 30 billion Ghana cedis. Also cut 30 billion Ghana cedis from the budget. And then I make say in the debate no cry analysis no now ebimu per se a bit higher but in the end or no economist or running numbers now they say no stay at 3%. That's 30 billion. Now the moment you cut 30 billion of GDP off the expenditure tables you don't need that 30 billion in on the revenue or taxes and even in financing. What am I saying? Until the first thing they say, cut the expenses, 30 billion, or cut now you can afford to do away with some taxes. Until I catch you say taxes be over 2024 fiscal framework ni dey aye we dey to parliament to so abawie nti na nkofo because na so so obey 11 onyi ne ya ye we akoto so abawie e dey akotre yo man ya bom ho besia na ade nyina we asanse awie ti untumi se be ensan nko wachi nko kan chense ya ye wie no me be bo besia nkrata me dey buy ni but me ye wie ne sanse candidate obeba 2025 president se obey se nti enne me kwa na scan enne no obey na etua nti and per se you can't do those ones. But what James will be cut by about 30 billion next year. That's about 3% of GDP. Or Katia, he doesn't need all of those taxes. But what am I saying?
Yes.
He doesn't need all of those taxes. And the explanation said once he doesn't need all of those taxes, he can afford to A, let some of them go, and B, reform the tax system. Into what chair taxes nibia obemanako. 2, reforms, you know. Because a flat rate, one of the major problems with tax administration is inefficiency and the lack of predictability. My crane member no beka chose a problem back on say o de name na go contain anymore. Who say CIF ni say. But beka ko do Ghana no na unim no because the dollar na calculate. Say change ya. Ebia wo name na de ko no fu say duty on 30,000. Be do na say duty na 45,000. Into Dr. Bawumia say flat rate asem no can. First rule ni say import duties e be CD based and flat rate. Into the container back of spare parts, but only say container of spare parts, asem count, 40,000 cedis. To buy predictable. Or there be a container of a row babe your factory be when you only say container back of a row we say 65,000 cedis, predictable. But sans work I say, oh massa a born any higher than Togo. Okay. And we had the first part of the flat rate. The second part of the flat rate, say, or say a VAT, we VAT a yina. On say acquire levy upon levy, cascading effect be o me did your Tony man, a calculate upon each other. To me soon in out. Also be collapsing into a single levy. No allow for input VAT, output VAT. To make it a single flat levy, I claim mobia into predictability. They say VAT and kofo evade VAT be brave because of the confusion in the calculation. Number 3, also we call Estonia. Or more income tax rate, a flat rate of 20%. Yen kase income tax no, o first 1,000 cedis will be to 12%. Then second 1,000 cedis will be to 13%. Then third 1,000 cedis will be to their economists friend of progressive tax system. Yen sa, or say a flat rate 20%. Inti me mami or ton idea wa say so yen ejume we na so nya 10,000 busumia obi to 20%
of the 10,000.
Kwesi chum, ojina ketua, or yen business. fact original ketua fa say enye corporate income tax original ketua na say na ketua ye kwasijum kwamba na mutia and say mami nkan wa say 20% flat rate what I say but yenka say 20% ye more rate no by a flat rate. So two things will happen. One, a simple and predictable, and secondly, no, the ananko food journey because of confusion near the end, to me participate, and also by broaden tax base. No, remember I said we are digitizing. Yeah, think of be brave about tax brackets. No, a bit broaden tax base. No, into obey. No, not only does he not need 30 billion, but kakrano here and what trim and more people are now paying a better and a more conducive rate. Ni trim uponi, the niswadi honi. Kwesi da yenu anu NDC for the manifesto bar. I will say a from better as a need be some senti most of my dream chere
on tax
reforms anything. Cause say baby I do no enye eno ana me catch obi say enye kukurudu eyezu eza debi. Eye say issue nini Mahmoud Bawumia any swadi hu on that issue nenu ni. Yewura Mahama wadaroma also when swadi hu on the same issue any day. Na Ghana for na compare say me hwemu away and
but flat tax rates no don't you think